All right. Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Results Loading podcast hosted by Prosperous AI. I'm your host, Michael Atkin, and today I'm very excited to be joined by Andrew Collier, co-founder and chief revenue officer at Kitchenery. Andrew seems to be a jack of all trades in terms of his career experience, dabbling in sales, marketing, banking, entrepreneurship, a little bit of property management. The list kind of goes on. Looking forward to hearing from Andrew about all the experience and how it shaped who he is today and how it's gotten him to where he is today. And with that being said, Andrew, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Looking forward to having this conversation, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate the nice intro. A lot of people would say I've bounced around, but jack of all trades is a nice way to say it. I think I found my true passion here with Kitchenery, and we're on a very nice uphill trajectory as of right now.
Excellent, man. Looking forward to hearing how we got here and how being a jack of all trades helped you in terms of finding that niche. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, looking forward to it myself. Let's get rolling.
Cool, man. Well, with that being said, can you share the story of how you transitioned from working in the industrial sector and financial services to becoming a co-founder at Kitchenery? Little kind of walk us through the genesis of the idea and how this whole situation came to be.
Yeah, so I come from a long line of entrepreneurs, so it was always in my blood, and I think that's why I sort of did a lot of things growing up. I sort of saw what it took to run a business and how you have to think about holistic venture execution across the board. I started actually working at the family business when I first got out of school. It's actually in the industrial steam heating industry. And then, found out quickly family and business is a really tough thing. So I started to go out my own and, just popped around for a lot of years in my early 20s trying to figure out what worked for me. And then what really was the game changer, I worked at a company called Ayla Networks right before Kitchenery, and they're the premier IoT platform provider in the consumer product space. They do like Shark Ninja's robot vacuum, Keurig smart coffee makers, Kenmore smart washers and dryers. And so by the will of God, luck, the universe, whatever you want to call it, I actually met my co-founder at a tech event here in Tampa. I was, sort of just meeting people, and I said, hey, I think my company's about to get sold and it's not going to be a great acquisition. I'm looking to move on to something else. I really think wireless power is up next. Like, do you happen to know a guy? And this guy, I still think of to this day, named Stan. He goes, actually, I know just the guy. And I said, well, look, I'm more of a sales guy than an engineer. I'm pretty technical, but I wouldn't consider myself an engineer. And he goes, trust me, this guy needs a sales guy. And so to his credit, Akshay, he is a master engineer and a genius. And he said, oh, you want to come work here? He's like, you want to come work for me? He's like, pitch me right now. And so I got us another round of drinks to sort of cool the air a little bit. And then, yeah, we talked for about 45 minutes. And then through a series of negotiations, 6 months later, he said, listen, I definitely think you could sell for me. How about, coming on as co-founder? We're still in really, really early stages of the venture. Like, would that be something you're interested in? And I had to think about it. I was like, well, I know a lot about business, but not sure I'm ready for this. He goes, trust me. He's like, if you can sell, he said, fundraising is the same thing. You're just selling the business. And so for the past 2.5 years, we've really just been making it work, just, going at every angle possible.
Totally. And so did he kind of put you through like a 6-month trial period to see if it was the right fit for him? Because he had obviously started Kitchenery before you guys even met, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came on initially just helping him fundraise on a pure like 1099 contract. And then as we started to have some success, we raised about $250,000 last year. And then about halfway through that, he saw that I was effective in what I was doing, and I brought a skill set that he didn't possess. And that's when he made the offer. And it wasn't an easy decision at first. I'll be honest. I was double desking. I was still working my full-time job. I was helping him as much as I could, doing meetings. And it really was one meeting that changed everything for me. We were talking to one of our RV partners, and they saw the potential of the product and started throwing some numbers around of, unit volumes and prices and that kind of stuff. And then it all just clicked for me. I was like, this isn't, a $1 million business. This has a potential to be much, much bigger. And I just came to him the day after that, and I said, okay. I was like, I'm leaving my job in 2 weeks. I'm all in. Let's do it.
I'm ready. Let's get things going. And did you guys have revenue at that point already? I mean, had you closed that deal with the RV customer at that time, or are you still kind of working the opportunity?
No, so we're actually still pre-revenue. I mean, we have some modest pre-order revenue, but we had investments coming in. So no sales revenue, but we had investment revenue enough to, pay ourselves, make the bills, that kind of stuff. But sales cycles, especially on technology integration, are typically a year plus. So we've actually gone a couple different routes since then, into some bigger plays that we think are going to happen. And we're actually, I can't say the name quite yet, but we're in the final negotiations with a Fortune 500 on technology integration. And so that will be, a life-changing contract if we can make it happen, which I'm very certain that we will.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that's the startup life, man. I mean, you live and die by the big contracts and you take it on the chin for months, if not a year or so, until you have that huge breakthrough. And then it's like life changing.
Yes.
We kind of go through it. What you described it feels pretty familiar for me. And in terms of grinding, talking to customers, getting a feel for what's out there, what the market wants versus what you think the market wants. Being able to deliver on the expectations and needs, fundraising, everything in between. And then once, you get that golden conversation that starts to develop and it's like, man, we may really be onto something big here. It's an amazing feeling, obviously.
Yeah. So I encourage founders to use the power of observation. So what happened was we were in the advanced technology group of one of our potential RV partners, and they were like, listen, we love the pad, absolutely, and we want it. We're not sure that our customers are going to love your appliance designs. So to hedge that risk, go build a wireless power ecosystem of appliance brands that people already know and love that are compatible with your platform, and then we'll buy it from you all day. So for the past year, that's, really what we've done. And through a couple, trade show lucky breaks and some good conversations, we've got, one of the biggest conglomerates in the country, ready to sign on the dotted line. So hopefully by this time, or not this time next year, but in a month from now, maybe I'll come back on and let you know that, that happened or something like that.
Yeah, we'll get a major career update from Andrew Collier in terms of the development of the business in 30 days. Now we'll keep that on the books just in case, man. So mainly the idea here is WPT, correct? Wireless power transfer. And
Absolutely.
you guys are getting into a fairly saturated market in terms of kitchen appliances, I would imagine, right? I mean, there's already big players historically who have owned most of that market, I'd imagine.
Absolutely.
Is the goal now going to be integrating the technology into appliances and makers that already exist, or are you trying to sell the Kitchenery branded appliances that already come with the WPT features?
Yeah, so interesting question. So we're trying to do both, which a lot of people have advised us against. And so here's the reason why we're doing both. We not only do we believe that we can make a sort of new class of devices, which is on the WPT integration side, and for the reasons I explained that we need to do that, but we also have a really strong team of engineers. I'm the only non-engineer on the team who have made some really interesting advancements that I think the market are going to love. Now, Kitchenery brand is going to be very high end. Now and we have to play in that market because we have to recoup engineering costs, the advancements we're making on the side. But, sort of as the Tesla model, right? You introduce the high end, and then as you get the money, you can come down to the mass market. My thought process, and this is a point of debate internally in our company and around all of our advisors, is that eventually we're probably going to have to sell the brand to one of the big players and just focus more on being the power platform of choice. And the reason is because our core IPs on the software that exists between the pad and the receiver. And so that's really our moneymaker, what makes us valuable, and I think is ultimately the bigger opportunity.
Totally. And it seems like you can really put the power pad anywhere in the kitchen. And then eventually it seems like the plan is most kitchen appliances will be compatible. And then you can just boom, turn your toaster on right there in the middle of the island, or,
Yep.
Microwave, oven, what have you. And that's kind of the value add or the value prop, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it extends even bigger than that, really. So my thought process and what we've thought is if we own enough counter space, not just, kitchen appliance counter space, but if we have these pads and other tables and other surfaces, we become a very, very sticky business. And we can upgrade the software over the air. So now we can not only just do wireless power transfer, but also charging. So that opens up a lot of different classes of devices, power tools, medical devices, obviously phones, tablets, laptops, I mean, even drones. It's a very interesting large vision, but we narrowed this focus because appliances really haven't changed a whole lot in 50 years. So we thought it was something that was overlooked. Akshay got the idea when he was in during COVID. He was working at home in his one-room apartment, and obviously as an engineer, he hates clutter, and was like, wait a minute, if everything else is going wireless, why not this? And then we started Kitchenery and the device specific part of it, because we had to come to market with something that works. If we just had the pad and we didn't have any devices that worked with it, nobody would believe us.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And so that's why we've taken this dual strategy, and we're sort of coming to a crossroads of how we want to proceed. And the reason I say that is the world's first cordless induction kettle is about to be launched by us in the next probably 30 to 45 days. And so that'll work on any induction hub. So it allows us to not only get our name out there, get in the market, start generating revenue, but it's sort of that hybrid approach to start getting people to think that, devices are going to work wirelessly on induction hubs before we launch the full quantum energy pad and the silent blender.
Absolutely. No, and it's great that you guys are already thinking this way. You're not just pigeonholed into kitchen appliances. It's like, this is pretty applicable to all electricity. I mean, why even have power cords 50 years down the road at this point if this is going to work out well? Like you said, it doesn't need to just be appliances in the kitchen. It can be anything and everything that is requiring electricity in the house or in the commercial building or what have you, right? And then, like you said, it makes things sticky, thus increasing your LTV, and it's a beautiful win-win thing for everybody, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. We'll see.
Fantastic. So, Andrew, having started your career in the family business, I actually did myself as well. So I can definitely relate to you on that front. Did that experience influence your approach to leadership, entrepreneurship, and ultimately customer success?
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about leadership. My grandfather, my dad, and my uncle started the business, and so it was just a focal point of my family my entire life, for good and bad. I mean, obviously internal family squabbles, at family events, like it always comes up. And I will give them a ton of credit that they did a very, very good job of, keeping work at work and then keeping family, in family. And so it was one of those things where I was introduced at a very young age that, business, especially entrepreneurship, is your path to freedom. Like, if you don't want to have to go trade time for money, no matter how skilled you are and how much money that you're making, you need to go into business, and you need to go into business for yourself. There's a great quote, and it says, the man who truly works for himself. And that was just one of the philosophies that was instilled in me early. And I saw, when I was born were the really early phases in the business. And so I saw, my dad traveling a lot. I saw the offices that they started in. I saw them build their own factory. I saw the eventual outcome of the business doing well and what it did for my family. And, we come from a very small, Amish adjacent community. So I saw what it did to our family's, reputation and standing in the community, and all the people that worked for my family and all those types of things. So as specific to entrepreneurship, I would say my uncle and my father have a very different style than I do, just because, they've been at it since the 70s, really late 80s, and they come from a little bit of a different era. So, it's very like in the office every day. It's very 9 to 5. It's now they're much more technology forward than they used to be. But back in even the early 2000s, they were still taking orders by fax machine. And so I've seen them go through these shifts of like, okay, remote work is a little bit okay, more text messages, more emails, that kind of thing. And then I've also seen them implement it in the business. So they invented this system called the aqueous solution that I helped them program. And it is a PLC that runs an entire industrial steam heating pump configuration. And it's doing insanely well in that market because of the way that they set up their business. Like all of their engineering is into overhead already, and so they're crushing all of their huge competitors like Siemens and stuff because they can sell it for like half the price. And so it's innovation. Everybody thinks is like, oh, what's the new tech gadget or what's the new SaaS platform? Sometimes it's just small iterations on things that have been around for a while and that people don't think, but actually still move, a lot of the world. I mean, I think it's something insane, but it's like 90+% of industrial buildings and hospitals still use steam for like sterilization, and because it's so efficient from a heating standpoint. You said entrepreneurship, leadership, and what was the last one?
No, that was it. Yeah, your approach to
Okay.
leadership and entrepreneurship. So you hit it on the head, man. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you said something really funny. I'm not sure if you meant to do this or not, but you said in terms of taking down Simmons and whatnot, it's like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to kind of adjust make small iterations to things that have already existed and that are already successful. That's exactly kind of what you're doing in Kitchenery, right? You're not reinventing kitchen appliances. It's not like you're creating some new type of toaster or microwave or anything like that. You're just making things a lot more convenient and a lot kind of optimizing the entire process in terms of utilization, in terms of electronics. And obviously, you're already discussing expanding outside the kitchen, not just into the house, but in the world in general.
Yeah, absolutely. The our core IP on the software side, I think is what has a lot of people interested. We're not going to go too deep into the trade secrets, but it's basically called smart frequency modulation, which allows us to deliver the exact amount of power in real time. So it has huge implications where places where electricity is not ubiquitous. So RVs, boats, planes, remote areas. And so this sort of innovation opens up a lot more convenience to a lot of industries that are not very traditional. And so, yeah, our thought process is really, if you can do one thing extremely well, it's a lot more valuable than doing a lot of things, above average.
Yeah, which it sounds cliche and simple, but it does make a lot of sense. I see a lot of startups say, oh, we can do like 90 different things. And taking that something like that to market, it's like, oh, you check in on them 6 months later and, unfortunately they're gone. It's becoming an absolute expert on one thing, one problem that you've identified in the market where there's a gigantic addressable market and opportunity for you guys to really disrupt what has existed the last, what did you say, 50+ years, and take it to market, and people are going to be blown away, it seems like, especially with something as revolutionary as, WPT in the kitchen and beyond.
Yeah. So wireless smartphone chargers have been around for 15+ years now. Our technology is about 100 times more powerful, but like we didn't invent this. We just, again, had small iteration. And the one piece of advice that I've gotten 1,000 times, and what I tell every like startup and entrepreneur that I work with and advise, I'm like, focus, 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 focus. And that's why we don't even really talk about the big vision or the dream. We're just like, this is what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. Here's the partners that we're going after, and here's what we're releasing. And honestly, the reception from investors has been really good because they see like a lot of new entrepreneurs have the shiny ball syndrome, like, oh, idea. And we have been like ruthless as to saying like, okay, here's where we are, here's our name brand, here's how we're approaching it. If we get to profitability, then we'll start thinking about all of the other things that we could do here.
Totally. And you mentioned the technology within like the pad. Do they literally have like, microchips in them? Are you collecting data or anything like that? Or if you're allowed to speak to that at all,
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I can. So that's actually the third part of our business model. And this is why we think it's going to be a very large opportunity, because I personally think that that's going to be even a larger market for us. So we have, smart MCUs inside the pad and inside the devices themselves. So there's multiple ways that you could go about this. And this is where my IoT platform background comes into play a lot. So we can connect and collect all of the necessary device data. So that's extremely valuable to the who, what, when, where, why is using your product, what features they're using. A thing we like to say is how many buttons do you use on your microwave? Usually 2, right?
The same, like 4, yeah.
Yeah. 30-second, and then like popcorn or pizza.
Yeah.
We had this design philosophy for a while that more features meant, better, but it's honestly switching to the reverse now. But So from the collecting and selling device data point, it becomes valuable to multiple people. It becomes valuable to the OEMs that we're integrating our technology into. And then it also becomes valuable to like the RV makers, for example, because as they move towards going electric, they need to know every single piece of equipment that's using electricity, how much it's using, what they can shut off, that kind of stuff. And so we really think that the data might be an enormous play for us, but time always tells.
Yeah, well, with these days, as you know, data is like as valuable as oil. So that's why I ask. I mean, how are you guys managing that data? Or where are you kind of synthesizing that data so you can have an overall look as to what the data is actually telling you so you can utilize it?
Yeah, so there's that's a conversation more for the software people on the team. Like I was a sales guy at the IoT platform, so I know how to I know how to make it sound sexy, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, there's a really complicated piece of a software tech, and I mean, there's a thousand different ways to go about it. I mean, my advice, what the conversation we used to have is like build it or buy it, and what seems to be as these IoT platform providers gain more traction in the marketplace, the buying option just seems to be much more reasonable for a lot of companies, and they already have all the features that you could want built in. And so that's probably the ultimate way we'll go. And then they have all the necessary like combinatorics and logic and AI and ML that you would need to analyze it and package it for a useful business outcome.
Totally. So you're focusing on AIoT as well, right? For some aspects of data collection and integration into homes and businesses and whatnot too.
Yeah, absolutely. Which opens up, a seemingly another market, but we've had to take this view as much as possible to get reasonable enough traction to go further. But yeah, I mean, if you can save some of the big commercial spaces a lot of money on electricity bills, well, then you have another interesting piece of data, or another
Exactly.
interesting piece of business. Excuse me.
Yeah, especially when you're integrating AI. I mean, as you know, AI is so mainstream now, and with the smart predictions and identifying potential problems and everything like that, it seems like that would integrate super well into what you guys are trying to accomplish, just because that data is going to be super valuable when you're talking to like RVs or boat companies if they want to start integrating stuff like that. I know boats now, like they have the wireless phone charger, but now we're talking like, hey, you can bring like a whole microwave or a whole convection oven or something and grill on the boat, for example. Just throwing it out there. I mean, that data is going to be super valuable for you guys later on down the road, as well as those insights that AI can provide once you're able to collect that data pretty effectively.
Absolutely. So just I would say caveat is we focus on anything right now that's below the 2000 watt range, which is about 90% of your small devices. Typically, you don't move a microwave. So we're focusing on things that you would remove off the countertop, which is like our focus on mobility and cleanliness. And the we can actually, so we have 3 different versions of the pad. We have a in-top inlay counter version, which is what you're used to seeing with the beautiful glass interfaces. We have a mobile version, and then we have an underneath the countertop version, which seems where like the yacht manufacturers really want to go because they want that beautiful galley experience.
Less clutter of course, and yeah, I was just throwing it out as an example. Like this is where it could go. I know you
Yeah,
guys are still
absolutely.
more preliminary, but yeah, no, I noticed that on the website as well, and it's like it does seem, based on also some of the insights you provided today, that the possibilities are pretty limitless eventually, and this will be a complete game changer across a variety of sectors and industries.
We're hoping so, that's for sure.
Fantastic, man. So challenges. What are some of the most significant challenges you face in terms of kitchenery and scaling, and how have you kind of approached overcoming some of those initial startup pain points, if you will?
Yeah. So any well, I'll talk about a couple things that I think are relevant. So everyone's excited when they first start entrepreneurship and they first have that idea and they first get maybe a small win or two, or they maybe first get an investor. And so one topic that I harp on is defensive entrepreneurship. So what I mean by that is, everybody knows the typical offensive points of entrepreneurship. You need corporate governance, you need an attorney, you need an accountant, you need all of the typical business things. What people never really talk about is, what do you need to keep operating day in and day out when nothing is going right? So like sleep, nutrition, spirituality, exercise, like that kind of stuff. Because the biggest thing that you're ever going to fight is just fatigue and wear down and the voice inside your head. Like, people ask me all the time, they say, do you have any doubts that this is going to work? And I always say, every single day. You got to learn to turn that voice off, compartmentalize, and push forward no matter what. I mean, the amount of sacrifices that you have to make towards your lifestyle and your friends and your family and comforts of life that you're used to, it's got to be all or nothing. And the phrase "burn the boats" has been pretty common over the last couple of years. When you don't give your choice to go back, it's either I'm seeing this at the bitter end, or there's absolutely nothing. So on the challenges specific to the business, after Akshay was in the Techstars program and got our first investment from Stanley Black & Decker, we thought we were on the up and to the right. And so then, after that, we sort of hit a lull point, and we were like, okay, what now? So then we did a crowdfunding round that was pretty successful. And so we're like, okay, now we're back up again. And then we hit another lull point, and we were like, man, like, it just, every time it feels like we hit a win, like we plateau and we don't know where to go next. And so it really takes extremely creative thinking to do anything, really new. And when I say that, like, you have to call everybody in your network, and you have to expand your network like rapidly. You really have to be willing to ask the very uncomfortable questions of yourself and people that you know and love, because if not, you're not going to make it. And it's always waking up to another problem. Oh, the board we thought was going to work didn't work. There's not enough space, or the design is too big, or they gave us an LOI and they're not looking to actually advance in the pilot anymore because they don't want to risk their brand on a new company. The money that we thought was going to last 6 months is only going to last 3 months. I mean, it is endless, and it's 24/7, 365. I mean, through my own personal experience, I've lost a lot of friendships and relationships because, a lot of people just think like work stops at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and I have 2 days to, just go have a good time. And I'm like, my job is 24/7, 365. I mean, I've got to take calls at 5 a.m. and I've got to take calls at midnight, and it's just what it is. And if you're not willing to do that, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm chuckling because it's so relatable for what we're kind of dealing with our startup as well. And just being okay with getting kicked in the teeth like 3-4 times a day, 7 days a week. And we call it the startup death dip. Kind of, like you were saying, it's like, oh, we have something great going on. Like, this investor situation is going to work out, or we're going to close this deal. And then, you can imagine a graph, and we're trending upwards, and then you plateau, and then you come back down. And it's like, wait a minute, no, we need to continue the trend upwards and stay there, if not elevate again, because we're too young and too new for us to get, fall into that lull and eventually fail, which is what happens to 90% of startups typically in the first 2 years. Yeah. So no, everything you're describing is completely relatable. That's why I was laughing, just because it's like so many things going on. You have no control over anything. You mainly are getting kicked in the mouth, and you got to just take it and persevere. That's kind of what the name of the game is. No one said it wasn't going to be like that. We kind of just chose this life.
Yeah, it really is something I think is innate in people. I try to separate people into sort of 3 categories. So the majority of entrepreneurs are just actually self-employed. If they step away from their business, it stops working. The second set of entrepreneurs are what we call lifestyle entrepreneurs. They just want to get the business to a point where they can sort of do whatever they want, make their own schedule, have a couple employees working for them. And that's completely fine. All of these roads are completely fine. And then you have your 1 percenters or your 0.1 percenters who really want to see where they can take it. And often often at great expense to their personal health, to their personal relationships, to people they love and care about. I mean, there's been a million super successful people talk about it, but it is really something that I think most entrepreneurs are even uncomfortable sharing with people, because it makes you very vulnerable, and it makes you very upset even thinking about some of the decisions that you've had to make, and some of the things that you've had to miss, and some of the people that you haven't spoken to in years. But there's just that like need for something greater than just what most people experience in their life.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the underlying theme here at the Results Loading podcast is having getting a taste of what the reality is. Because I think LinkedIn, there's so much fluff, as you know, in terms of like startup success, and it's like, oh, subscribe to my newsletter and I'll tell you how I scaled to like 7 figures in 5 months. And it's like, no, you didn't. Like, it's not a thing. I can tell you it's not a fact. And like, you have to, overcome challenge over challenge and overcome all that adversity to get even remotely close to taking a step forward that stands, And so I like hearing these stories about what the reality is, because I've yet to have an entrepreneur on this podcast that says, oh yeah, no, we scaled to 7 figures in 6 months or a year, and we raise super easily, and the VCs don't give us a hard time. It's not real,
No.
And so I think it's almost a little bit of an anti-LinkedIn fluff podcast is what it's turned into, because I want to give a platform to the reality of the situation. 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24/7. That's the reality. We're not all in Bali at yacht week, after 6 months on the job here. It's just not how it is.
Nah. One of my mentors told me CEO is a skill set, not a title. And I play the LinkedIn fluff game as much as everybody else does, and
sure, we all do.
Yeah, and social media, it's all fake, right? I mean, celebrities buying followers, posting brands that they don't use, getting marketed to, and that's what I tell people, especially young people that are just getting into this. Like, they're like, oh, how do I do this, or how do I get to here, or like, look at this person, what they're doing. And I said, first of all, you need to put all that away. I'm like, you need to never scroll and only post. Start with that. I was like, don't ever compare yourself to anybody, because if you're doing something new, there's nobody that you can compare yourself to. And then you have to look at it through the lens that it's all just marketing. Like, and I constantly tell people who come up to me and ask me questions, I'm like, stop getting marketed to, stop getting marketed to, stop getting marketed to. And I think it shifts people, like we call them paradigm shifts, when they actually see like the day-to-day when they're in it versus what they see. It's your highlight reel, as everybody says. That's the simplest way. So I appreciate that lens, and it's a really honorable thing for you to do, because people, everybody wants to be seen as awesome. Everybody wants their Instagram life to be their true life, but it's not even close.
It's not. And it's like, I found a lot of connection. Like, it's really to connect with other entrepreneurs because of that aspect. And it's like, everyone seems to have that in common, whether you're 5 years down the line, 1 year in, somewhere in between, before or after. Everyone's going through it, man. Everyone, unless you're like a private equity baby and you're just starting a startup, but you're backed by, your dad's worth 9 figures or something like that. And those people do exist, and that's okay too. But there is a definitely common ground in that aspect. And I think personally, I find comfort in having those conversations and understanding the adversity that others go through. And it's like a little bit less of a lonely entrepreneurial feeling, even with partners. It's the name of the game. It's what we signed up for. But ultimately, the bet is that it's going to be worth it in the long run, which is why we do this.
Yeah. To your private equity baby comment, I think that's really funny. And, I come from a small town, as I said, and so it's actually one of the poorest areas in Pennsylvania, just by statistics. And it's funny because when I moved to Tampa, 2 things happened. One, I ran into what we call a lot of $30,000 millionaires, people who, flex their crazy wealth, but in reality, it's not there. And then I also ran into a ton of the other kind of people, and I mean multi-billionaires that just money's no object to them. And so why I say don't ever compare yourself to people is because you never know like who's behind them. And
right.
And that comes in both directions. So, I'm obviously a huge networker, and I think it's from my early finance days, but like you always ask for the referral and you always ask who they know that might be interested, because every person that you ever meet has 1,000 people behind them. 1,000.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people if you think about it, to like
Exponentially. Oh yeah.
yeah. They might be connected to this guy through a friend, through the country club, through the pickleball club, through the yacht club, through a dinner party, and you never know. And those like little things have brought me to some of the most insane, social gatherings that I've ever been to, and some of the most insane parties that I'm just like, I do not belong here. And like, it's funny because, when I'm there, like, I'm a clean cut guy. I know how to put the suit on. And it's funny because like when those super rich people are at those parties, they expect everybody else to be there super rich. And so I was at one of these, and the lady, we just started talking about like where we want to go on vacation, that kind of stuff, just shooting the shit. And she was like, "Oh, are we taking your jet or mine?" And I started laughing, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Ma'am, like, do I look like someone who has a private jet?" And she was like, "Yes."
And she's
like,
dead serious too. She's
dead
actually
serious.
asking you.
You go through these shifts because like if you don't envision yourself as someone who can afford that, you're never going to get there. And I'm very, very big on mirror work. I mean, if you would have seen me 2.5 years ago trying to ask people for $1 million to invest in my business, I was so meek, I was so shy, I was so uncomfortable. I just thought it was crazy. And then now I do like 150 reach outs a week with like 3 or 4 investors. And I'm almost just so nonchalant about everything that we're talking about. People are like, wait a minute, like, what did you just say? Like, that's crazy. And I'm like, is it crazy? Like, I don't know.
It's just another day in the life for me. It's not that big of a deal, really. Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah. And real quick, not that there's anything wrong with like coming from money or, being a private equity baby or anything like that, but it is just kind of a good point, especially given, what we've just described and what it looks like here on the ground floor, of course.
Oh, yeah. What I'll say about that is like, I think young entrepreneurs, and even ones who get started older, have to realize that some people start with a disproportionate advantage, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't beat them in the long run. But like, if you don't have, $2 million in funding in 6 weeks because daddy, uncle, or whoever isn't backing you, that doesn't mean you can't get there. I mean,
it's okay.
Bezos started Amazon with $300K investment from, his family. Now, he was also in Princeton honors in computer science and electrical engineering, so he was a genius. But, I'm just saying, like, it's possible. And I tell all the people, I'm like, it's possible, because eventually you're going to run into that angel who's like, you know what? I like you, kid. And I've had those scenarios. Like, I'm lucky enough now to have a few billionaires in my network who know my name and they know my face, and they will pick up my call, or they will like talk to me like I'm a person. And it took, 6 months of calling them every day to get the first call. It took, multiple emails. It took me posting relentlessly. Now, I haven't won their investment yet, but if we hit certain milestones, they're like, you got my money. So right. It's just the name of the game. Like disproportional advantage from the beginning doesn't equal disproportionate endings.
Yeah, or result. But yeah, no, you hit so many nails on the head that I don't even know where to start. But yeah, it's like the beauty of the network, and it's like who's gonna grind it out in the long haul. Absolutely. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Period.
Yeah. War of attrition every single day.
No doubt. And I want to get into Champa Life real quick here, Andrew. So you're the president of Champa Life, involved in several community-driven initiatives. What role does social entrepreneurship play in your life, and how are you balancing your corporate responsibilities on top of that? And can you speak a little bit about what Champa Life is as well?
Absolutely. So, Champa Life was sort of built as a community, as a brand. So, New York, the city that never sleeps, Viva Las Vegas, that kind of thing. And Champa, we were known as Cigar City back in the day, but we don't really own that rep anymore. I mean, we don't have a ton of cigar factories here anymore. They're mostly moved to Miami now. And so Tampa needed a new identity. And so when, Tom Brady came to town, won the Super Bowl in 2020, obviously the Bolts going back to back in the Stanley Cup, people just started saying Champa Bay, Champa Bay, Champa Bay, Champa Bay. And I have a friend and business mentor who, when everybody was fighting over the trademark, he went the next step and just bought all the digital real estate. So he bought Champa Bay Sports, he bought Champa Bay Bucks, Champa Bay Lightning, Champa Bay Rays. And so like, it's still sort of in a legal deadlock, but they're going to have to buy him out regardless. And so he, started building partnerships with all of the professional sports organizations, getting the support of the NFL Alumni Association, getting the Bucks to do some events with him. And he started thinking, and he was like, wait a minute. He was like, this isn't about sports in particular. This is about the city. And so he's a really sort of full circle thinker. And he was like, wait a minute. He's like, what is salt life? He was like, what does that mean? And he was like, it doesn't really mean anything, but it's on bumper stickers anywhere. It just means that you like the ocean or you like the water. Well, everybody likes the ocean. Everybody likes the water for the most part. And he's like, and everybody wants to be a champion. He's like, so what if we iterated on Champa-based sports and made it Champa life? And, we got to thinking and we were like, well, that's actually a really, really good idea. And so this brings me to social entrepreneurship. So the definition of social entrepreneurship is the perpetual cycle of corporate social responsibility. So essentially what it boils down to is this: the businesses need the nonprofit, and the nonprofit needs the government, and the government needs the businesses. And so it looks like this. Businesses that are more prosperous and make more money can invest back in the community for, programs such as re-education, training. Therefore, those nonprofits donate money to the community. Those community obviously help the rules and regulations, forming other businesses, and they ultimately become more prosperous and put more money back into those businesses. And so it's the perfect cycle. And so what we've done is we've championed a few events, what we call the Social Entrepreneur Summit, and we picked different charities to support. So one of the most recent ones we did was to work with a charity called Celebrate Birthdays. They try to give every single foster kid a birthday party because typically they don't get them.
Nice, right?
Yeah, it's one I really, really love.
Sure.
We partnered with one of the largest women's shelters here, various veterans organizations, and so what you have to think about is, as an entrepreneur, your ultimate goal is to build your community around you so that they can help build the things that you're trying to build. And if you don't have the support and the employees and community relations members to do that, you're not going to happen. So we've sort of tied them all together intricately so that it's going to come down to, Tampa has unofficially rebranded as Champa Bay, and so we'd like Champa Life to be sort of the sticker that every business puts, in their bar or in their office or like that. Like, oh, we're a Champa Life business. Like, we want to be champions. We want to lead, not only from our performance, but like who we are as people. And so that was all of the thinking around that. Now, how that plays out and how that works is, through a combination of events, endorsement from the mayor, different community organizations. But
sure,
ultimately, when you're any new business, you want to have the endorsement of all the legacy leaders. And so the best way to do that is to give them things they want. And it's just that simple.
That's fantastic. And it kind of goes full circle with like the prosperous businesses, the nonprofits, the community. Everyone plays a role in that circle of life, if you will. Everyone's involved, and it's all kind of it falls underneath the Champa Life umbrella, if you will, and everyone's kind of living that Champa lifestyle. I really like it, especially given the benefit that it's bringing to the community, and it's really uniting it's a united front, if you will. It's funny more cities don't do something like that. Obviously you guys had some serious sports success, but Tampa Bay is an awesome town, and it always has been, Brady or not. Yeah. I've been to Tampa a couple dozen times at this. I mean, it's not like, oh, we're trying to get no hate against like Reno, Nevada, but it's, you know what I mean? Like there's a difference. So to kind of bring that to the front and kind of, I don't know, marketize the Champa lifestyle and Champa life, if you will, I think is brilliant.
Thank you. I didn't come up with it, so I won't take credit for that.
No, but you're involved in whatnot,
yeah.
and you're repping it, of course, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have tons of gear, and every day I try to pass out a couple of shirts just to get the brand out there. We're actually
sure.
we're actually planning a launch of some new merchandise at the next summit that we're going to give away to a lot of the associating charities. So it's a really nice way to do things in collaboration versus in competition.
Fantastic. Fantastic, Andrew. And last thing before I let you go here, final reflection. Kind of as you look back on your career thus far, and obviously you've got a great, yet, relatively long road ahead of us. What do you think you're going to be most proud of?
So we have a phrase that I like to live by. It's price is arbitrary, value is absolute, impact is everything.
I know it's a little bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I'm going to be a father next month, so I think that'll be a life-changing experience for the first time.
I'd say so.
Yeah, pretty excited about that. And as my dad always told me, like, the most thing I'm ever proud of is being your dad. So that's a simple one, but as all of the great men and women throughout history have said, like, none of them are perfect. You just try to, be more good than bad, and you try to leave that as your legacy. So if I can encourage people to think creatively and really go after their dreams and work, tirelessly towards it, I think that would be a good start. And then I believe that if I can help with my network knowledge, capital, etc., those people succeed, I think that'll ultimately, be it. I heard a quote once that said, a man or woman should spend the first third of their life learning, the second third of their life doing, and then the last third of their life giving. And I've seen that from a lot of entrepreneurs that I know are, much older and of the last generation. Like, they will give you their time. They will show up to your events. They will, if your business is viable, invest in you. They will, give you a lot of things that you would find insane for anybody to give, just because, I mean, you can't take it with you. So they're just like, you know what? I've done all this. I spent all this. This is what I want.
I think that's fantastic, and a great, ending point for us in terms of learning, executing, giving back. I don't think there's much more that you can do, especially in this world, and the insights and expertise you've gained through your experience and your decision to go down this path, and then helping others do the same thing is super valuable, and I think something that you can always have with you.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's one thing that I would leave people with, it's you die twice, when your body goes, and then the last time somebody says your name. So make sure it means something.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself if I tried, Andrew. So thanks so much for that, man. If is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrapped up here?
Appreciate everything you do for everybody, Michael. It's an honor and privilege to be on here.
Likewise, man. It's been an honor to have you on. Appreciate the insights. Congrats on all you've been doing. Congrats on being a dad here in a month. It sounds like you got a ton going on, but no doubt you can handle it. And best of luck to you. Really appreciate you you being on today.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Take care.